Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Coaching Call podcast. On this podcast, we'll cover various types of coaching by trainers in sports, martial arts, fitness, and business. We'll discuss each coach's methods to getting the most out of their respective athletes or clients and how they attempt to change the platform in which they coach. Join us on a fun adventure as we discuss unique coaching styles. Coaching is a universal part of how we get others to get something done. Join your host, Raphael, and his guests on this unique journey in coaching.
Hi, I'm Sifu Raphael, and this is the Coaching Call podcast. If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. This episode was made possible by listeners like you. How are you, my friend? Thank you so much for being here today with me on the Coaching Call. How's everything going?
I'm great. Good to see you. I'm glad to be on the show.
It's funny, when we first came on,
Yeah,
my screen blanked out. I was like, oh no. That's why I was like, but obviously I was on, so there we have it. It's funny because we were talking earlier and everything was peachy, and then all of a sudden we get a glitch.
That's life, right? Everything seems to be running smooth, and then you get that glitch, like you said.
For example, this morning I was doing something online and I was purchasing something, and when I went to buy it, my credit card didn't have enough funds. I'm like, it's a credit card. How can I? And then I went to look at my checking account and all of my credit card stuff, and it said I have no accounts. I'm like, what is going on? It was a glitch. It was a glitch with the banking, and I was like, for like an hour, I said I have no accounts. I'm like,
Ouch.
that would be a lot of money lost.
Yeah, that would be scary.
The funny thing is, I look at my banking every single day.
Yeah.
Because I'm being proactive, right, with finances. So I'm always looking at my credit cards. I'm looking at my bank accounts, at all my statements, all my different, I have like several accounts. When I said I have no accounts, I was like, oh, don't panic. It's going to be okay.
Right.
But that's what happens with technology. And I'm happy that you're here with me today. So thank you for making the time. And you're going into a different aspect in your life where your life is going to get easier. But before we get into that, I would love to know more about you. Let's go back into your childhood. Tell me where you were born, where did you grow up? And the third question is, who influenced you before the age of 10?
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up on the opposite side of the country of where you are. So I grew up in California, and my dad's an orange farmer. So my upbringing was on farmland, 40 acres of oranges, and it was bikes and quads and swimming, and also working for my dad. About 7th grade through high school, I was working with my dad. So my childhood was full of that, but also I love hoops. So I can't tell you how many hours shooting hoops with friends and running over to my friend's house and playing hoops from like when I got home from school through until my mom yelled from the back door that dinner was ready. And she was like a quarter mile away, but I could still hear her somehow. Because we didn't have phones at the time for that purpose. So she would just yell out the door, tell me to come home, and I'd shoot a couple more hoops with my friend and then run through the orange grove. And there's 3 orange groves I had run through. And I still remember the days where I'd hear coyotes or I'd hear creepy noises because it was getting dark by the time I'm heading home. And I would be sprinting through that grove. Just those orange trees were like monsters chasing me, but it was still worth it to go shoot hoops with my buddy. So between that and biking and various other fun activities, I was a busy young man growing up.
Nice. Wow. I'm just thinking that you're running through this orange groves, and that had to be a vision, man. That had to be such an adventure. Not only the fact that your dad was a farmer, but that you helped What was your job, if you will, when you helped your dad?
Yeah, so I mean, to answer your other question about before I was 10, definitely my dad was the primary influence in my life. I would say my mom as well. And then I had an uncle that lived right next door in the Orange Grove next door, if you will. And so he was a big influence too. I think he's one of the reasons why I like sports so much, because he is a big golf and baseball fan, even though I don't really enjoy either one of those sports too much, but he just loves sports. And so he influenced me big time in that. But in terms of work, one summer, my job was to prune 10 acres of oranges. And usually you don't prune oranges. Usually there's a big machine that comes through and tops the trees so that they're not too tall, and then they top them so that there's less fruit, and that the fruit that is there is bigger. And then they'll also chop the sides of the trees. Well, someone had gone through and sprayed the trees with a weed killer that had killed the bottom of the trees. And so orange trees grow all the way down to the ground like a bush. And my job was to trim out all the dead wood on about 10 acres of trees, which is a horrible job, to be honest. And because it's 105 to 115 degrees in the summer in Central Valley, California. So I'm out there with the loppers, just trimming trees over and over again. So lots of manual labor. I drove tractor and dug ditches and sprayed trees, and I was responsible for irrigation stuff and all kinds of different jobs. But I think my favorite experience was when my parents took out just a section of their trees, and they were going to replace them with mandarins. And so the way you do that is you quit watering the trees and you basically let them die. And then a machine comes through and rips out the trees. And then they pile them up into these huge piles that are 20, 30 feet tall of just orange trees. And I think this was probably 5 to 10 acres of dead trees in separate piles in this area. And they're separated enough that when you burn them, the fire doesn't jump to any of the other piles, nor does it go into the trees that are still alive. And so my job was to walk through these piles of dead trees with a mixture of gasoline and diesel
My goodness.
with a wick on the front that was on fire, that I would just kind of toss this fiery I don't know what you want to call it, but this fiery mixture onto the piles. I can't remember how many piles. There probably was 10 or so. And I remember walking through there, and there'd be 50 feet of distance or maybe a little bit more between the piles. But it was like a storm of wind and fire, and it was pretty incredible. And I was basically safe because the distances between them. But looking up at this huge pillar of fire in these trees was incredible. So various adventures and various experiences that I had working for my dad, and it was only summers. Fortunately, I think it was fortunate that I didn't have to work during the school year, because then I got to play during the school year instead. So good times.
So it was only during the summer, and you said the temperature was 105, 110 or so. How hot did it get when you were burning those trees?
Oh, it's like a sauna, 130 degrees or something like that. I was moving, through it, so I didn't just stand there. It was like you walk through, light it, and then they just burn. And because it wasn't a windy day, there was no real danger. The fire created its own wind, but it wasn't a windy day, so there was no danger of me or anything else burning. So kind of crazy in retrospect.
What would you say was some of the lessons that you probably still carry with you today that you learned during those times?
Yeah, my dad always was up before me. And lately I've been seeing these videos about LeBron James, and because the Olympics and all that went really well for the Americans, and he's always the first one to the gym, and my dad was always the first one up. He was also available to me too. So not only was he up first, but he was available to me for like sports activities, for conversations, for those types of things, despite the life of a farmer, because you're beholden to the market, you're beholden to the weather. There's a lot of things that are different in farming than any other business that are way out of farmers' control. Yet he made himself available. So between being the first up, being as disciplined as he was and is, and the reputation that he and my uncle and my grandpa created for their business, that paid forward to me because I'm up at 5:30 or earlier. I'm doing my thing first thing in the morning. I'm disciplined about my connections with people. There's a high integrity to what my dad, my uncle, my grandpa did. Same thing with myself. So if I hadn't had those experiences just kind of embedded into me by observation from when I was really young all the way till even today, I don't think I'd have the level of integrity and consistency and intention that I do. So yes, I put work into it, but I think it was programmed in at a young age, and I'm very grateful for that.
Very cool. So considering the fact that we're 3 hours apart and you were up early to be on the show, I want to appreciate that.
Sure.
So I know we started at 10, but it's really 7 a.m. for you, right?
It's true. It is. Yep. So
And
maybe that's why there's a little bit of rasp in my voice that's not usually
you sound but considering that you were able to see that and you appreciate the fact that your dad was there for you in helping and guiding you and being present just to converse with you, right? I think that's an important aspect that a lot of people don't necessarily get. And one of the things that a lot of people, especially business people, they focus on the business so much that they don't have time for their families.
Yep.
Meanwhile, and I understand because back in the day, and I'm Colombian, and my grandma had a farm, and I just remember eating all the fruit from it, but I don't remember doing any farming. I know my brothers, because they were older than me, they used to actually go on horseback riding and pick fruit. Right? It was pretty interesting. I was never able to do that, but I was the one that after they picked it, I would go eat it. So get to that. And I understand what it takes to be a farmer because there is so much involved. And you talked about the market, the weather, all these different things that play unlike any other business. And it's everything, right? Because the reason I believe a farmer plants is because they're looking for tomorrow. It's not a quick
Right.
plant it today and tomorrow morning I have these fruits, right? It doesn't happen that way.
Yeah, I mean, my dad planted some that those mandarins that I was mentioning that were related to the fires. Uh, those are trees that take about, if I'm remembering correctly, it takes about 10 years for them to actually start producing consistent and quality fruit, right? So you have to plan for that acreage to not produce really anything for you, but you have to spend money on it to take care of it so that it does produce eventually for you.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a consistent cycle of that with orange farming, any farming, I would imagine, but I know more about orange farming than others. And it's really incredible, just to be considering those angles in light of the current context you're in and the current market you're in, your current cash flow that you have, and then choosing, okay, we're going to rip these trees out, get the soil ready, and then plant these other ones, and then 5 years we might get some fruit, and in 10 years we'll be moving consistently. But that also assumes that the market wants mandarins at that time, right? Or wants that specific variety of navels or valencias or whatever type of fruit that they're going to be planting. And it's a brave thing to do. It's a lot of risk, but it's a lot of calculated and intentional risk. And so there's so much to learn. I've noticed from, especially in retrospect, now that I'm older and I've been in business myself and made my own mistakes and had my own successes. The conversations with my dad about business are really remarkable because, man, I get it way better now. And so now I see when he started it when I was 0 years old and he was like, okay, we got a daughter and a son and I'm going to start this business from zero. That's really, really courageous. And that's one of the values that's really important to me, is to be courageous. And he went for it. And a lot of people have done that. Obviously, my dad is not the only one. There's thousands of people, even today, they're going to just go for it. They're starting at 0 and they're like, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to make this thing work. And that to me is also a huge lesson and really, really impressive.
It takes a lot of courage to plan for success in 10 years.
Yeah.
Because we plan and we hope that in a couple of months we're getting fruit from our labor. But for
Yeah.
your dad, it was 10 years in planning and nurturing
Yep.
that plan.
Yep.
A lot of people plan, but yet they don't nurture and expect success from not nurturing things. I think
True.
nurturing is one of the most important aspects. And thank you for sharing that story with us, because that allows us to even talk about this aspect of business. How do we nurture our business? How do we nurture, even if we work for someone else, how do we nurture that to be more viable, say 10 years from now, right?
Yeah. I think it's who. It's mostly a who rather than a what. It's spending time with the right people and interacting with the right people as clients or customers, and then interacting with the right people as vendors and advisors and coaches. Because if you put the collective group together and the wisdom and insight of your clients, of your customers, of your vendors, and of your coaches and consultants, now you can do a better job of understanding what's going to happen 10 years from now. I know that when I first started my business, I thought I had to figure out everything myself. I thought that I had to create the systems, to create the processes, create even the way that I do the coaching. And I was sorely mistaken. And it took me about 18 months to realize that I am working way too hard when there's thousands of other people that have done exactly what I'm trying to do, run a coaching business, and have done it successfully. And then I got a coach. And then I started finding systems of other people that have been successful. So for me, it's attaching myself to others that have been successful, have a track record of that, and modeling after them. One of the greatest things we can do in business is find a model that has been successful and figure out what they've done and how they did it, and then copy it. It's a compliment. You're not stealing here. I'm not referring to that. Just referring to the systems and processes in which people go about doing things, and you model it and then modify it to fit yourself, modify it to fit your business. But I think the answer is who, and finding the right 5 to 15 people to surround yourself with.
So let me ask you something. You talked about your dad and your grandpa.
Yeah.
They started this business. How come I'm not talking to Kyle the farmer today?
Yeah. After working in the summers, and, I only shared a little bit of what the work was, but ultimately it didn't fit my wiring. I love the one-to-one interaction with other people to figure out what's going on in their head. To me, that is just, if I could spend every day, all day doing that, I'd be exhausted, but I would love it. And in farming, you do need to get into the head of the other farmers that you're going to be serving, and into the head of your employees. And so that's true. But the level of change I want to help make it doesn't quite fit farming. And I had a decision when I was 26. I was about 26 years old when the quote ultimate decision was made to not pursue that life, because at that time I had been working in a men's mentoring program, and my job was to mentor the guys. I lived there, and then I worked there, and I helped them by teaching classes, and I helped them with one-to-one conversations. I helped them to learn how to work, anything and everything as it relates to living a life that is at least viable. Because these guys came in and they typically had drug and alcohol histories or broken families, and they were pretty beat up in life from it, and they didn't have good foundations. And so my job, and the job of the people in the program, was to help them build a better foundation so they could be launched off into life. And I loved that job. That job was fantastic, and it really fit me. But in the middle of all that, got married, had a couple kids, and we decided that it was time to make a decision between moving back to the Central Valley where I grew up, or up to the Pacific Northwest where my wife's parents are. And it took me 6 months to make that decision, because that decision was ultimately saying, hey, mom and dad, I'm not going to become a farmer. I'm not going to take over the family business. I'm not going to be directly mentored by my dad and taught business by him. And it took a long time to make that decision, because it felt like I was ditching my family I was ditching a legacy. I was ditching a generational business for really an unknown up here. And ultimately, I did make that decision. But when I look back, that was 10 years ago now. When I look back, no, that was 15 years ago now that I made that decision. But anyway, um, there's a thread. There's a common thread of coaching and mentoring people. And in those years that I've been doing it, I've been doing it since I was 19. It is my gift. It is my gift to the people that I get to work with, and it is something that I'm only getting better at. And for the next 40 years, I'm going to continue to do. So I'm only going to get better at it. And for me, that's the legacy I want to leave. And my family, my grandpa, my uncle, my dad actually helped set that up for me because of their stability in their lives and what they were willing to do. Right. So I'm super blessed for those reasons that I can be exposed to a gift that I have and not be kind of pigeonholed into an area that I would probably do well in, but not be as fulfilled.
Content. Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And so tell me about your teenage years, right? You talked about your uncle also being an influence, maybe your grandpa. Who outside of your family,
Yeah.
some of your biggest influences, say from 10 to 20?
Yeah, I had a coach in high school that was my swim coach and water polo coach. So I imagine there's not water polo out in New York, but there is in California. And his name was Coach Gross. His last name was Gross, and he was an excellent coach, but he was an even better man. And so I had the opportunity to be raised in the context I was, and then all of a sudden I had this coach that would really world-class level guy. And he at a senior level, he went and started playing water polo after I graduated from high school. And they won like they won 3 international championships as water polo players. I can't remember what country they were in, but I want to say it was Australia. But anyway, they were winning international championships for like senior level water polo. So I got to be coached by someone like that, which is really remarkable because it takes you to this different level and understanding of what it is to compete, what it is to prepare. We were really good. We won our leagues, and I was really good and had these opportunities. And we eventually got to go to the Junior Olympics, and we got our butts kicked in the Junior Olympics, but I got to go, and that was a really amazing experience as well. I only got scored on a few times though. My position was a defensive position where I was supposed to stop the top offensive player, and even in the Junior Olympics, I only got scored on a couple times, which is a big deal because water polo, you're scoring 10, 15 goals in a match.
Interesting.
But he was huge, and he was a Christian, or is it? Well, he did pass away, but he was a Christian, and so in the context of a public school, he was able to bring that to bear in a way that was not inappropriate, and he was part of my journey towards my faith as well, and so his impact was huge. And then after him, I was in college, and my senior year of college, I was, to be honest, Sifu, I was afraid of being an adult. As college was wrapping up, I had a fantastic time, just loving life and enjoying school, but mostly enjoying just hanging out with friends. And I was a surfer, volleyball player, ultimate frisbee, just having a great time. It was time to get a job. It was time to have real life come at me, and I was scared. 18-year-old or 22-year-old, excuse me, and I was afraid. But I know you said between ages 10 and 20, but this is still relevant. I remember sitting at my desk with the computer in front of me, and I was talking to my parents, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I was behind in units in school because I had spent, I don't know what I had done, but I was behind in units. And so I had to double up my units at the final quarter of school. And I was never a good student, so that was really tough for me. And I was just scared. But that spring break, I had gone to India for a missions trip. And on the missions trip, it was a beautiful experience, which is its own story. But there was a guy named John from the same area that I had come from. And we came back, and I got to know John a little bit. And he called me a couple weeks after I was basically confessing to my family, I don't know what the heck I'm going to do with my life. And he said, hey, there's this job opportunity that I think you'd be a good fit for. And that was the men's mentoring program. And so I went to the interview, talked to the president and the executive director of the program. And an hour and a half later, they're like, "Do you want this job?" Which meant moving out of my apartment and living with these guys and not having anything but a little bit of but every other weekend to myself. That was it. It was like really giving up my life to this program for at least a year. Yeah. So I said yes, because it actually felt right. I said yes. And for the next 9.5 years, the president mentored me every Tuesday. And he was every Tuesday for 90 minutes, we'd go to lunch. And he was a serial entrepreneur, ran 30 businesses, retired in his early 50s. And he's still running that program today, and he's never taken a paycheck. And so I got to be underneath his wing as well in my experience of growing up and into manhood. So I've been super fortunate. I've kind of put myself into positions for that to work out, but I was put in the very beginning of my life into a position for that to work out as well.
That's pretty cool that you got mentored by this gentleman. Let me ask you a question, and it just came to me when you were talking about water polo. How high is the pool? Are you guys, kicking your feet all the time, or are you on the ground? How is that? What's the height? Is it 5
Yeah,
feet?
I mean, pools I played in were 9 feet deep, but you never could touch. There's never a pool you could touch, so you were always treading water.
Treading and swimming. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. Yep. I was in great shape.
To be.
Yeah. There's a pool up here. We go to Canada to hang out and swim at the pools. And I used to do a long distance swimming, so 500 yards. And I did that at the pool. And then and it wasn't too big a deal. I wasn't going too fast, but it was okay. I was doing fine, but I was also a butterfly. I did butterfly as a swimmer, and that was my best stroke. And so I did 50 meters of butterfly at the pool in Canada. And when I was in swimming, it was 100 yards was the distance that I did. And I was usually top 3 or the number 1 when I was competing. I was huffing and puffing on the side of the pool in Canada afterwards for like 5 minutes. And I was like, my gosh, you have to be in such good shape. And it's funny how we don't realize how hard some things are until you get into them, or you get into them again. We forget the work that it took, and go back to nurture, right? You got to nurture that physicality to stay there. You got to, the muscle memory was there, but the physicality of it and the cardiovascular side of it wasn't, and that's okay. But it just reminds you that practice and intentionality towards what you're trying to achieve is absolutely key. And you know this, you've been doing martial arts forever, and you're a teacher of it, so you get it.
Yeah, when you train with intention, I think that's also, and to have that, I guess, stick-to-itiveness, if you will. It's important, because when you do get off of it, it's like riding a bike, but can you ride it like you used to?
Right.
It's a whole different ball game.
True.
This is why I train every day, because I don't want to lose what I already have.
Yeah.
But it took me to get, right? And when you consider the choices you made, and you talked about how fortunate you are. Fortunate is because it was meant for you to be in these positions and take these actions. And it would have been unfortunate if you would have followed the dreams of your parents, even though as great intentions as they were, right? And you talked also about how they helped you get to move on, right? They didn't put you down because of your decision, which is an important aspect, because I hear so many times, like, why are you going into your parents' business? Oh, because I have nothing else. Do you? Do you have nothing else? Or you just chose to shut everything else off, right?
Right.
That may not your answer too, but you chose to see differently. Because a lot of us, and you talked about, it's pretty interesting that you said, I was afraid of being an adult. That was kind of funny. but yet so true. We don't really understand what, and that's why they have all those shirts with adulting, right? You have to be
Yeah, right.
because a lot of people don't act like adults. They don't balance their checkbooks. They don't do all these things because it was done for them.
Hmm.
Growing up, did you even have to think about dinner? No, your mom called you and you were half a mile away and you still heard her.
Right.
You didn't have to think about that. You were playing hoops, man. That was it. You were in the moment. And even when you were running home and you heard coyotes and so forth, you had this energy about you.
Hmm.
You didn't have all these worries. Right? You didn't have to pay the bills. You didn't have to think about the food or preparing it, all these different things. But when we become an adult, these things hit us hard.
Yep.
I can only imagine somebody moving out for the first time and expecting toilet paper just to show up, expecting the tooth paste to be there every time without it finishing. It's like, who used to put this here for me?
Right.
This toilet, how come how come there's shampoo? Oh wait, I gotta spend money for that? Oh my
Right.
God. Where's all my bills? Now all my bills. So there's a lot of things that we have to consider when we do go into the adulting world, if you will. It's as scary as it is. I cannot see myself not being an adult,
Hmm.
though I act like a kid,
Mm.
right? Because when I keep telling everybody, I keep celebrating my 25th birthday anniversary, right?
Yeah. Nice.
Because I don't feel my age. I feel so, I'm in my 20s,
Hmm.
my 20s.
Yeah.
And if I knew what I knew now when I was 20, wow,
Right.
it'd be
Wow.
so different today, right? And when you decided to start helping people, what did that do for you? What did it do for you?
Yeah. I think the first thing it did for me when I entered that program and lived with the guys, judgment. That was the first thing it did for me. It cleared out judgment, and in the real strong negative way. I still judge people sometimes, and I still judge myself and whatnot. But for the most part, it cleared out judgment. And since then, especially in the path that I've chosen, people dump stuff on me all the time. Like, I can't tell you how many people told me about being cheated on, or they cheated on someone, or they tell me about the abuse they went through, the trauma they went through, all these really rough things. And I don't ask them. They just tell me. And I think it's because I've learned to control any sort of judgment on them, because I have this stability from all these conversations I've had over time. I have this stability inside of myself to know that I've heard it before. I actually saw someone commit suicide. I've heard people threaten that. I've been in conversations to help people with that. I've heard conversations about people being sexually abused for years. I've had conversations about rape. I've had conversations about people being physically abused, mentally, spiritually abused. And so it's none of it, unfortunately, is a surprise to me. And so I've learned as a result of all those exposures to stay composed and just honor the person that's speaking to me, honor them with what it is that they have to say. A story that I write about in my book is this student named Phil, and he unfortunately had some abuse in his history, some sexual abuse in his history, and so it had really taken him out pretty severely in terms of his just ability to kind of have confidence and stand up for himself and be um, just pursue what he wanted. It really had handicapped him, let's say. And it also meant that he hardly spoke to anyone, and he hardly gave you any attention either. but he was one of my first students, and I co-led with another guy in the house, and we approached things pretty similarly. But one thing that I decided to do was something called the 10-minute Tuesdays. And 10-minute Tuesdays was to sit with each student for 10 minutes and just have a conversation with them, a one-to-one, really intentional, hey, how's it going? What's going on with your life type conversation, like they've never experienced before. Most of the guys hadn't experienced that before. So my bedroom that I shared with the other house leader had a bunk, and the bottom bunk was actually a futon that folded out to be wider, but it sat up. So I would sit on that black futon, and then the student would sit next to me, and we'd just sit there and chat. Well, Phil wasn't a talker, and the first time I did this with him, I said, "So how's it going, man?" Nothing.
Wow.
Nothing. And I think I asked him that question probably 3 times in the 10 minutes. I waited, maybe the first time I waited 10 seconds, then I asked him. Second time I might have waited like 30 seconds or so. And then I realized he ain't going to say nothing. And so we sat there and for 10 minutes in silence. And all I asked was, how's it going? And I was like looking at the time constantly, like, okay, when is this 10 minutes of torture going to be up? And it was. And I said, okay, we're done. And he left, didn't say a word. The next Tuesday we did it again. Almost the same experience. He didn't say anything. 10 minutes, he left. Third time I asked the question, and I don't know how long it took for him to respond, but he said something, I don't remember his words, but I'm sure it was something like, fine, okay, or whatever, just a very short answer. And then there's a little bit of conversation that, again, I don't remember, but there's a tiny bit of conversation. And that was what created the trust. That opened the door to create the trust. And he never became super conversant with me, but he became at least communicative with me. And that was huge. And I think what the biggest lesson I learned from interacting with people was sometimes you just need to be present with them, and be present with them not only in body, but also in mind and heart and empathy, like in every way possible. Be present with the person, and in every conversation, all the better, right? And I've like even developed a listening method for this purpose. But this is what one of the biggest lessons I learned from being a mentor and a coach to other people is that just be present. And maybe that's all they need. They don't need advice. They don't even need a question. You just need to be there, because nobody else has ever been there for them like that.
Probably for this gentleman, no one ever even said, I'm going to sit with you for 10 minutes. I'd say no. But the fact that you only asked him 3 times, and you didn't say what's wrong with you, which would have made things worse for him.
Yep.
And the fact that he showed up the second time, the third time, and so on. And you talked about building trust. I think that's one of the biggest things that is so hard to get from anyone.
Yeah.
And it's one of the hardest things to get, yet one of the fastest things to lose. It's extremely difficult to regain trust, yet to even get it to begin with. Like you did, gentleman's name was Phil, right?
Yeah.
And so considering that, I'm thinking that you probably did the Tuesdays because you were meeting with your mentor every other Tuesday.
Possibly. I didn't think about that. Yeah.
For 90 minutes, going to lunch and so forth. It's interesting when we can pay it forward like that.
Yeah.
And you might have done it maybe intentionally or unintentionally. But it benefited you probably more than it benefited them. What you say to that?
Yeah, I think because those types of interactions, I'm already coming in expecting to learn something, expecting to be helpful, but being intentional. Whatever lessons are to be learned, whatever experiences are to be gained from that, I'm more receptive to it than maybe the other person is. When you start to throw in powerful questions that really get at the heart of what's going on with someone, then they learn more. But there's an art to those questions. There's not just some sort of a list that you can run through. And I think that's that's the difference between, really, it's the difference between mentoring and coaching, is that is the pivot. It's when you get into coaching now, it's not a mutual exchange. It's an exchange that is much more targeted towards them getting as much as possible out of it, because of the way that you show up, the way that I show up, and the way that I ask questions for their benefit, not my benefit. In mentoring, there's a little bit of a focus, to be real. There was a, what can I get out of this also? Coaching don't do that. It's a whole different thing. It's what can I provide for them through the power of questions, sometimes through the power of teaching. Like as you teach your students, you know more than any of them, right? And so yes, you get something out of it for sure, but I'm thinking, getting way more from you than you are getting from them, when it comes to that deeper level of coaching and teaching that you provide.
I mean, even yesterday, and you're so right with that, because even yesterday I was teaching a technique that some of them already I had taught to, other ones had never seen it. And so I said, okay, this is the technique, let's do it. And I said, now let's add a twist to it. And when I did it, they were like, oh my gosh, that's right. I said, now I want you to do it. It's good if I can do it, if I can pull it off. It means nothing if you can't, right? So you need to be able to pull it off. And so we went into the details of it, right? We went into try it out. It's not working. Why is it not working? So when we are mentoring somebody, it is about seeing their success. I think is probably one of the most important things as a mentor, because we're not getting paid to mentor somebody,
Right.
right? But we are getting paid to coach somebody.
Mm-hmm.
There's a huge difference. And one of the things that you talked about is that it's important that they get something out of it. It's important in both levels. Otherwise, why would you even go back to that mentor if you're not getting anything out of it?
Right.
Why would you go back? Not worth your time.
No, it's true.
So considering the choices you've made with your life, and I'm sure you have no regrets with the choices you've made, but if you can change one aspect of your choices, would you? You don't even have to tell me what it is, but would you?
I think so. I mean, one of my strongest values is learning, and I think there's this new subject that some people have heard of, some people haven't, but it's called neuro-linguistic programming, and it's a tool that I've been using now for just over a year. And in the context of coaching, and even my own personal life, and with my, actually, I've used it all everywhere. Actually, come to think of it, the impact that it has made using those techniques and those tools has been remarkable. And so if I could go back, I would start learning that tool probably the minute I started my coaching practice. And then I would be 5 years farther down the road with it. So if I could go back, I would probably do that, just because the impact that I've seen in the short year that I've been doing it. I mean, people's lives, even just yesterday, I was talking to a client, and we were trying to come up with, why is she stuck on weight loss? Why can't she lose the more pounds? And she's trying to lose 10 pounds in 90 days, and she's lost 4, but she's like, I don't want to lose any more weight. She said, it doesn't feel safe to lose the weight. I'm like, well, that's an interesting thought. So a lot of my focus is on what's the resistance, and let's lean into the resistance, because the resistance is there intentionally to help you. Just like when you exercise, the resistance ultimately helps you in the long run. Otherwise, you're not going to get any stronger. So let's mentally lean into that resistance. And so we did. And it turned out that resistance had everything to do with, she didn't feel safe and she wanted a layer of protection. And so the extra fat was a layer of protection. Per what she said. I mean, I literally said that. I said, is it true that you think the extra fat on your body is a layer of protection? She said, yes. I'm like, okay. So ultimately what it boiled down to is she was grieving the loss of her old self. If she lost the weight, she would have to let go of an old version of herself, and she was grieving that, and it didn't feel safe. That's beautiful. So now that's not a concern anymore, and she's going to lose the weight, right? Because that mental block isn't in the way, but it doesn't matter how many times she counted calories or how many times she lifted the weights or how many conversations she had about why she can't lose the weight or techniques she uses. She'll never get down below that weight. Or even if she does, she'll go right back up because the mental safety wasn't there. Bringing that, 5 years of that experience forward to now, and it, would have been a great thing, but that's okay. I don't regret it. But those are the types of transformations that I'm just looking at. Like that little tweak fundamentally changes the way that she sees herself, and therefore then her weight loss it's gonna come off with no issue.
Absolutely. So when you were talking about basically you're talking about NLP, right? That's a shortcut for it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize it's the words we use.
Correct. Yeah.
Use externally, but probably most importantly, the words we use internally.
Yep.
Which really define who we are.
Yeah, 80% of our thoughts are negative. And so, you have about 80,000 thoughts a day, 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. And so that means that you're combating 64,000 negative thoughts every single day. When you're awake, I don't know what the heck happens when you're asleep, right? But so 64,000 thoughts a day that are negative in let's just say you sleep for 8 hours, 16 hours worth of negative thoughts that you're having to deal with. That's hard. And then 95% of our thoughts are repeat every day. So you've got 64,000 thoughts every day that you're having, and 59,000 of them repeat every day. And so it's working towards how do we change our thinking and decrease that negativity. I don't know if you know scripture or not, but there's a scripture that God says if you have a mustard seed of faith, you can tell this mountain to lift up and move. And it's a metaphor for the impact that faith can have on my life, your life, other people's lives. And the way that I see it and what I do is the mountains that I'm helping people move are these mental blocks, or what I call head trash. It's just this head trash that prevents them from running their business successfully because they think they're an imposter, as a classic example. Or the mental mountain that says I'm busy, and they're always busy, but they're busy doing I don't know what, right? And these are those mountains that need to be moved. And I fortunately have the opportunity to be a part of that. But that I think is the crux here is we just have so much negativity spinning around in our heads, and we do it with how we speak to ourselves, by saying the things I can't, I should have, I could have. That type of language is crushing people.
It sure is. I want to show you this, but we're going to come back and we're going to talk about the garbage man. Take a look.
In a world where words shape destinies and connections forge futures, this November 22nd to the 24th, Speaking Prowess brings you the ultimate hands-on workshop. We have a lineup of some of the most influential communication experts in the industry. These are the voices that will guide you on a journey to enhance your ability to connect, influence, and succeed. Sifu Raphael, master instructor and founder of Speaking Prowess, blends communication and leadership to help you reach your full potential. Richard Walsh brings his strategic and tactical expertise to deliver rapid, lasting results for your business. Dr. Oliver T. Reed, the international multi-best-selling author and motivational speaker, known as the Writing Coach, will help you craft your messages with precision. Jose Escobar, a nationally recognized speaker and leader, will guide you in mastering personal development and leadership skills. This is more than just an event. It's a game-changing, skill-building experience. Walk away with communication prowess that transforms your personal and professional life. Speaking Prowess, where communication becomes your superpower. Reserve your seat now.
There you have it. So come improve your communication skills with us at Speaking Prowess, November 22nd through the 20th. So I want to talk to you about why do you call yourself the garbage man?
Yeah. After diving into coaching now for 6 years and really training and working on it, what I've noticed is it doesn't matter which focus I have with my client. Sometimes I'm focusing on their personal lives. Most of the time it's business. The reason that they're stuck, the reason they're not as successful as they want to be is the garbage in their head. And in my learning and in my training, what I've learned is there's 4 requisites to change. And the first is to release. It's to let go. And so what are they releasing? What am I releasing? What do you need to release? What's the head trash? It's the garbage that's in our head that's misleading us into thinking these negative thoughts. And it could be because someone said something to us that was pretty rough, and it's just been embedded in our minds that that's who we are now. That's how we are now. It could be that we did something, had some sort of failure, and now we are labeling ourselves. So the head trash is often the labels. And if you don't deal with that, then we live and work and perform through stinky trash, right? And so when you're performing through that, you're not going to have as good a success and as good of an experience as if that was gone. So that first step is to release the head trash. The beauty of that is when you move to the second step, when it comes to change, is you don't go back, right? When people are setting goals that are based on trying to get away from something, I don't want to be fat, or I don't want to be like my mom. I don't want to be like this person. I don't want to be like this person I was. What you're doing is you're focusing on the thing you don't want instead of focusing on the thing you do want. And so when you get rid of the head trash, what you're doing is you're letting go of the things that you don't want, and then you're able to create, which is the second step, create the things that you do want. Because everything is created twice, right? First, it's created in your imagination, and then second, you put the work in to actually create it. You see that move you're about to do in martial arts, and you see it first, maybe only in a flash because you're so practiced, but you model it to them, and you're demonstrating that you have to create it first. They're seeing it so they can imagine themselves doing it. So then you're helping them create it, and then from there we can then act on it, because we've let go of the trash. We've now created what we want to see happen. Now we can act on it. And finally, the last step of change is to stay focused. The thing about focus is if you don't let go of the garbage, you're going to keep smelling it, and you're going to be distracted by it. It's like trying to drive a car looking in the rearview mirror. It doesn't work. You got to look every once in a while because there's something to learn from it. But focusing on that rearview mirror doesn't create safety. It only creates chaos and some accidents, obviously. So for me, I go in there and we root around and we dig up the trash. And sometimes there's good stuff with that trash, right? If people do dumpster diving, and there's some good stuff in there sometimes, people that are searching for metals, precious metals on the beach. There's some trash and other junk on the beach too, but in there's some really good stuff. And so part of being a garbage man is helping them to sort through the good stuff and keep the good stuff and let go of the bad stuff, and then grow forward from there. So that's why I call myself the garbage man.
I love it. I love it. And like you said, someone else's trash can be somebody else's treasure.
That's true.
But when we dig through the trash and we pull out what's really worth keeping, and the rest is truly trash and should be truly dumped.
Yeah.
Kept aside. Like you said, the trash will only build up and smell even more. And then that will infuse itself back into our reality, what we're trying to accomplish. So considering what you've been doing and your career and your path, your trajectory, you're about to embark on a new adventure. Tell us a little bit about that, and why did you choose to do so?
Yeah, so there's a organization located in Spokane, Washington called Champion Empire. And I've been in relationship or connection with Jesse, the founder of the program, for 4 years. And so we've been off and on talking. And he's been watching my coaching business and really likes what I'm doing, has seen the impact. And so we had a conversation. He reached out and said, "Hey, are you looking for more clients?" I'm like, "Sure, I could take more clients. Who couldn't, right?" And so we meet we meet at a coffee shop and have a conversation about it. Well, it turns out that the values of his organization, the mission of his organization, my values and the mission of my organization completely, like they're not the exact same, but they align really, really well. And I'm not a visionary. I'm just not. I can vision things for sure, but I'm not a visionary. But he is, and I'm very, very good with creating systems that work for people and for businesses. That's one of my gifts, along with the one-to-one coaching side of things. Well, they needed someone to do that for the organization. And so now my opportunity is to help build up that organization, to grow it even more than it's already been growing, to develop the people within it, and to develop the clients that they have, while also developing the systems so that the organization can blossom even more than it already is. So it was this really perfect marriage of my talents and my gifts, along with values and mission that line up, because Champion Empire has some goals with it when it comes to giving, and so do I. And they're really big and lofty goals when it comes to giving. And I'm not going to share them because I don't know if they're public or not, but they're really big. And it's that, to me, is beautiful. I've got some really large checks sitting here that I want to give away to a couple nonprofits. And they're filled out, but they're not signed because I'm not ready. I don't have the funds yet. It wouldn't be responsible of me to give that much money away at this point. But the heart of that, it just excites me, because that's the type of thing that attracts people to the business. And doing the things that you love in a context where you have a team to support you and you get to support a team is what I love to do. And I haven't been able to do that for about 10 years. And so this door opening for me is the perfect door to walk through. And I'm excited to step through it and enjoy the new journey. And, 2 months ago, this wasn't even a blip on the radar, because I had no clue that he was even still paying attention to what I was up to. So it's amazing how things like that can happen in our lives. And you follow the thread, right? Keep following the thread of your gifts and your purposes.
Sometimes you don't know what's the fruit that it's going to bear, right?
Well, no, not at all.
You are a farmer after all.
Right. Yep. Always watering, always planting seeds, and
always planning, right? Because you may not be a fruit farmer, farming to help and help other people, right?
Yep.
So you're feeding people differently, right?
Right. Yep.
So considering all that you're doing, how excited are you?
Oh, well, it's funny. I'm super excited, but a little bit like nervous. When you start something new and you're like, well, do I have the skills? Do I have the ability to do this at the level that I'm being called to do? And so for me, that, I think, is the most exciting part, is the stretch of it all, is stepping into something new and how much it stretches you, because that value of learning for me is going to be fed like crazy. So nervous, excited, not anxious, not stressed, but nervous and excited.
Beautiful, Kyle. Thank you for today. I mean, it really is such an interesting story that you have, and what you're doing to help other people is really extraordinary. So thank you for that. Anybody who wants to reach you, I guess they can go through championempire.net, right, and reach you there.
Yep. And if they want to learn more about my methods, they can go to gillettesolutions.com and then type in /book, or just up at the top. And you can actually get I have a best-selling book, but it's also a ebook for free. So you can just grab the ebook of it if you'd like to learn more about my methods.
Cool. And we'll put that stuff in the description as well. Just for everybody out there, just remember that we are always looking to help. And just like Kyle is, so am I. I have an incredible offer for everybody, whoever wants to be part of a communication world, if you will. We have great opportunities for you. So go to speakingprowess.com/train, and it's also will be on the show notes. Come and join an incredible movement that we're creating, and we'd love to have you part of it as well, Kyle.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right, everybody, have yourself an exceptional rest of your day, and we'll talk soon. Take care.